The wind howled through the trees, carrying a chill that seemed to creep into their bones. The forest, once peaceful, now felt ominous and alive with danger. Mia and her friends had heard the stories, rumors of the forest being cursed, of people disappearing, but they dismissed it. As the sun dipped behind the trees, they continued their journey deeper into the forest, their laughter fading as the atmosphere grew heavier. The lantern in Mia's hand flickered, casting erratic shadows on the trees. They joked nervously, but each of them felt the unshakable weight of something watching them. It was too quiet, too still. Suddenly, a rustle came from the underbrush. Mia froze, her heart pounding. A dark shape moved between the trees, disappearing too quickly for anyone to see clearly. "Did you see that?" Mia whispered, her voice trembling. Her friends froze, exchanging uneasy glances. "It's just an animal," Mark said, though his voice wavered. "Don't worry." But deep down, they all felt it. This wasn't just any animal. There was something more, something darker. They continued walking, but the feeling of being watched intensified with every step. The shadows grew thicker, more menacing, as if the forest itself was closing in on them. Mia's lantern flickered again, and she turned, startled to see an old, weathered cabin ahead, half hidden among the trees. It looked abandoned, forgotten by time, but Mia felt an irresistible pull. "Let's check it out," Mia suggested, her voice low. Her friends hesitated, but followed, unwilling to let her go alone. The door creaked open as Mia pushed it. The air inside was thick with dust and decay, the smell of rot filling their noses. Old furniture lay covered in sheets. In the corner of the room sat a doll, its glassy eyes staring directly at them. It wasn't the innocent doll they had expected. No, this one wore a twisted, unnerving smile. The air seemed to grow colder as they stared at it, unease crawling up their spines. Mia, unable to resist, stepped closer. As her hand brushed against it, a whisper filled the air, soft at first, then growing louder. "Leave! Leave!" Mia jerked back, her breath quickening. "Did you hear that?" she asked, but her friends remained silent, too scared to speak. Mark, always the skeptic, stepped forward. "It's just the wind," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. But none of them were convinced. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind them with a deafening bang. Everyone screamed and rushed to the door, but it was locked, impossibly locked. They pounded on the door, shouting for help. The silence that followed was deafening. Then, the whispering began again, louder, more urgent, surrounding them. "Get out, before it's too late." Panic set in. The room seemed to close in on them, the walls pressing tighter. Mia's heart raced as she looked around, but all she could see was darkness. Then, the light from the lantern flickered and died. The room went black. Total, suffocating darkness. Mia reached out blindly, her heart pounding in her chest. She felt a cold hand brush against her cheek, sending a jolt of ice through her veins. She gasped, her breath catching in her throat. "Who's there?" she demanded, but her voice came out shakier than she intended. The air grew thick with tension. A low growl filled the room, coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. It was deep and guttural, vibrating in their bones. Mia's instincts screamed at her to run, but her legs refused to move. The air turned frigid, and she could feel a presence in the room with them. Something dark, something monstrous. Then, a pair of glowing eyes appeared in the darkness, staring directly at Mia. They were cold, hungry eyes, eyes that promised nothing but death. The creature, if it could be called that, was massive. Its twisted face twisted into a grotesque grin, its mouth opening wide, revealing rows of sharp, jagged teeth. Mia's blood ran cold. The creature took a step toward her, its breath hot and foul against her skin. She couldn't move, couldn't scream. Her mind screamed at her to run, but her body was paralyzed by fear. Just as the creature's jaws were about to close around her, the light of the lantern flared back to life. The creature recoiled, vanishing into the shadows. Mia blinked, dazed, trying to process what had just happened. The others were frozen, their eyes wide with terror. They were alive. For now. But it wasn't over. The door creaked open slowly, as if the house itself was breathing. Standing in the doorway, bathed in the dim light of the lantern, was the doll. Its smile had twisted into something far more sinister, more malicious. "Leave! Now!" Mia's blood ran cold. They had barely escaped, but they hadn't left. The curse had just begun, and the forest wasn't done with them yet.